looking into the mirror. There is a Greek myth which tells us the story of Narcissus. Now, Narcissus was a beautiful, handsome young man, and both men and women were drawn to his beauty. One day, after a very unhappy love affair, Narcissus wandered into the forest, and he stopped by a crystal pond where he was thirsty. He comes across a glassy pool of water, and as he kneels down to drink from the water, he is drawn to the image that he sees reflected back. It enchants him. He is in love with what he sees, and he is inflamed by the image that is reflected back. He sees the hair, the porcelain skin, the rosy cheeks, the dark brooding eyes. Attempts to kiss and hold the reflection are in vain, and Narcissus becomes frustrated by the teasing reactions of the image that he sees. When Narcissus winks, the image winks. When Narcissus waves, the image waves. And when Narcissus cries, the image cries. So Narcissus cannot understand why he can't reach what he so desperately desires. And so Narcissus would kneel there by that pool of water, forlorn and lost, until the water stilled and he could see the face once again. He would yearn with all of his heart, his soul, and his mind just for the beautiful one that he saw in the pool, which was, of course, his own reflection. But from that day on, he never loved anyone else, for he never moved on from the obsession with his own self. And he died the long and painful starving death of a self-absorbed person, looking in the mirror, all by himself, at himself, in the deep, lonely pool of the isolated. I think in all of us there's probably a touch of Narcissus. We like what we see reflected back to us from a mirror, at least hopefully we do. It is a good thing for us to feel positive about our outside image. It only becomes unhealthy when we become too self-absorbed, which happens to people when they look too long in the mirror, or perhaps you know somebody that is always looking in the mirror. They become enchanted by what they see. And we probably all know someone who is like the Narcissus in the story, and you might have even heard the term narcissistic personality disorder. Now, someone who could be labeled with a narcissistic personality disorder often displays some of these following behaviors. They have an exaggerated sense of self-importance. They have a sense of entitlement, and they require constant, excessive admiration. They expect to be recognized as superior, even without any achievements that warrant it. They're preoccupied with power and success and money, beautiful, the perfect mate. They have an inability or an unwillingness to recognize the needs and feelings of those around them. They behave in a very arrogant manner, coming across as conceited, boastful, and pretentious. Does that fit anybody you all may know? Or shall remain unnamed? On the opposite spectrum, I'm going to tell you a story about Cora. Now, Cora was an extreme, selfless giver. She was a dedicated nurse, and I know we have some very dedicated nurses here. Cora works hard every day, taking care of other people. And she really tries very hard to get so much accomplished with her patients, even though they are short-staffed in the hospital. She never turns down any requests from her colleagues when they are feeling overwhelmed. She tends to take on their burdens. She wants to be known as someone who is very helpful and not mean-spirited. She volunteers at her kids' school even if she knows she is too busy that month. And over the last 5 years, Cora has gained 5 pounds. And she is secretly very unhappy, though she will not share that with anyone. Some of the time, she realizes just how unhappy she truly is. Her partner constantly criticized her. When she heated up a late plate of nachos one night, the partner said, "Good golly, Miss Cora, are you really going to eat all that tonight? I thought you said you needed to drop just a few pounds. What in the world is wrong with you?" Now, Cora knows her partner doesn't mean to sound mean to her. They just had a really rough week at work. She recognizes it has been a long time since she has truly felt good about herself and about who she is. Her busy schedule, the not being able to say no for fear of making people mad, this had all taken a toll on Cora. The nachos that she scarfed down after 9 almost every night is about the only time that she felt good. Cora is what we call one of those detrimental caretakers. People like Cora are so busy rushing around taking care of everyone else that they just take little sideways glances at the mirror before they dash out the door to take care of someone else. Cora forgets who she is and becomes lost in the roar and busyness of her world, a world that will suck up everything like a giant tornado. And sadly, people like Cora forget the unique power and unique beauty that God has gifted to them. So are we selfish like Narcissus? Or are we selfless like Cora? You don't want to be either on one end or this end. You want to be somewhere in the middle, a nice balance. Now, I would like to dedicate this next portion to all the hairstylists who have worked miracles in my life. Now, if I had to guess, I would say most, if not everyone, who's in the middle of the spectrum between selfless and selfish. Sometimes we don't forget to look in the mirror. Do you remember who you saw? Some of us shy away from mirrors. We may look at our body image. I know I need to lose some weight. Our hair might not be right. We might be losing our hair. Our facial features we might not be pleased with, or we might be, heavens forbid, getting wrinkles. Whatever it is that makes us feel uncomfortable. Now, one place which I truly don't like to do it is we are forced to look in the mirror when we go to see our hairstylist, or if you go to see a barber. Now, I think hairstylists are a gift from God. They style our hair and make us feel very good about the image we see in the mirror, especially if we have been born with hair that is difficult. Frizzy, curly, baby fine like mine, thin, balding, the list goes on and on. One time many years ago when I lived on the East Coast, I went to see my hairdresser, Lyle, and I brought in this beautiful picture of Raquel Welch, and do not laugh at me, but I loved her hairstyle. And I said, I want Raquel Welch's hairstyle, and I showed her this beautiful picture. And she goes, good grief, don't be bringing me in pictures like that. It's a pair of scissors, not a magic wand. But hairstylists do make us feel very good about our image, our outer beauty. And I often find that they are great listeners. They like to listen to what is going on in our lives, the ups and downs, the triumphs and the challenges. They laugh with us, and I believe the majority of the people in the hairstyling industry genuinely care for their clients. So we go to a hairstylist when we want to work on our outer beauty, or when we go to someone who does what we call a total makeover miracle, which is something I long for. And they give us helpful advice on our hairstyle, what style of clothing will flatter our image, our makeup, the list goes on and on. Now, the people who usually go see a makeover specialist are the ones on reality TV, or perhaps an actor, a politician, or someone who needs to maintain a good public image. But what about our inner beauty? Where would we go for that, to get help with our inner beauty? If we want to look at our inner beauty, if we want to make changes or grow to be a better person, many of us seek out a faith community. And not just any faith community, but a faith community in which the people are willing to look into the Christ mirror. People who are trying to love themselves, to love one another, and to love God. Amen. Our reading today is from the letter of James, which he wrote to a very specific church. He composed this letter so that he would be giving practical advice to address specific issues going on in a specific Christian community. Perhaps it was a church that James worshiped in. Perhaps it was penned for another community elsewhere. But from my perspective, the first century community that James addresses in this letter were dealing with infighting and anger over the very nature of ministry and the divisions between those who have the resources to serve others and those who were poor enough that they needed to be served. There were divisions between one group and another. And apparently the fighting was getting ugly. That doesn't sound like any church, does it? So James writes to the church, and he uses some pretty tough language, and I'm using 21st century language here. I use a translation at times called The Message, which is excellent. Don't fool yourself into thinking that you are a listener when you are anything but. Letting the word go in one ear and out the other. That's what we say to our kids all the time. Act on what you hear. Those who hear and don't act are like those who glance in the mirror, walk away, and 2 minutes later have no idea who they are and what they look like. And then James goes on to talk about living the free life and about people who call themselves religious but yet are anything but. What James is trying to tell us is that we are to act on what we hear from the Word of God. He tells us that those who hear and don't act are like those who just glance in the mirror, walk away, and 2 minutes later have no idea who they are, what they look like, and what they've been called to do. When we look into the Christ mirror, hopefully we see a child of God, a person of God, who is loved greatly by God. And we are not to forget this. And we are then to go forth and put our faith into action. Now, a person who says that they are religious, I find they usually can talk a very good game, but I find it's only hot air. A real faith is one that puts the words of Jesus into action by showing the love of God to others. They reach out to the homeless, people who are homeless both physically and spiritually, reaching out to those who feel unloved. When people look into the Christ mirror together and see themselves sharing God's love in our world, we then have a group of people who are willing and able to change our world. And I do believe with all of my heart that a church is called to mirror and reflect Christ to one another. Now, lots of churches don't do that, which is why I think lots of people don't go to lots of churches anymore. We don't need one more place where we have to hide from our real selves, our true selves. We tend to put on a different face when we go to church because we don't want people to see who we truly are. But when we are willing to hold the Christ mirror up to one another, it makes us vulnerable. And people don't like being vulnerable. As we reflect back our true and authentic self, we find that we don't have to hide who we are, that we will still love one another with our flaws and all. So I think church is about taking the risk of looking into the mirror together and being a place where love is shared and truth is told, and the beauty of becoming all that God has created us to be is the work of the community, so that we can then go out and put our faith in action. I think churches can be an inner beauty shop, a place where love is shared and truth is told, and the beauty of becoming is the work of the community. For plain old mirrors are incredibly unreliable witnesses and companions, and we can get stuck by ourselves like Narcissus did. Or we can be like Cora. We can look in the mirror by ourselves and then rush away because we're so busy with others' agenda and forget not just who we are, but what God has called us to be. When we look into the mirror only by ourselves, we don't see us collectively. We don't see the real me or the real you. But when we hold the Christ mirror up to one another, we see who we are, and that we are much deeper and far more interesting and real than what we can see by ourselves using even the clearest mirror. To know and to love the real me and the real you, we need each other. We need each other to hold that Christ mirror up and to say what we see from one another. When I look out at you in the congregation today, I see compassion. I see creativity. I see bravery. I see humor. I see people that are fiercely loyal. I see people that have endured many struggles and challenges. I see people who are willing to forgive. I see wisdom and I see abundance. I also see a lot of potential. And I see the power that God has given to us as a group of people. I see kindness. I see beauty. I see a reflection of God's love. So next time when you look at the mirror, I pray that you will see it as the mirror of Christ. Remember how you are God's beloved, a follower of Jesus, a person who is filled with the love of God. See your inner beauty and that God has placed within you so that you can then go forth and reflect the Christ mirror back to others. Amen and amen.
Amen.